King's release from Reidsville. No doubt about that. And the RFK, that call galvanized our three guys, Wofford, Shriver, and Lewis Martin. That's Wofford on the left. There's Sergeant Shriver. And there's Lewis Martin. To action to make their Blue Bomb project. But in retrospect, the three key people responsible for the remarkable change itself doesn't happen unless these are the three people right here who made that happen. Martin Luther King and the two Kennedy brothers, and all three of them would be assassinated by 8 years later. And that's all I have for you this evening, and I'm happy to take any questions. Any questions or comments or complaints? You knew all this stuff, right? I didn't. I knew something about it, but really not until I got into really doing the research, and it was just an amazing thing. And my chapter, which is now chapter 2, The New Frontier, was going to be the first chapter of the book. It sounded like the way to write the book. It's the first of the 3 volumes that actually gets into the Kennedy presidency. But when I got about halfway through this chapter on the '60 election, I knew it had to be the first chapter of the book. And so there it is. And then, although I'd heard about the Freedom Rides, I'd never really read it. It is a terrible chapter to read, to tell you. It is really a terrible chapter. And Celine talked to you a little bit earlier about what it was like to read this FBI informant information we have. And the only reason we have it is because somebody asked for it under the Freedom of Information Act. And Jim Lazar, the lawyer that Alan mentioned before, is a friend of mine. He's the only person who saw that, and he gave me a copy of it. So it's not something that's just floating around in the public.
Dr. Newman, do you want to talk about the improbability but truth in what you just referred to, that for once it's not the FBI who is placing a mole, really. It's not that they're placing him. He's already there. He comes to them. But he's going to the CIA as opposed to the Bureau.
I'd be happy to talk a little bit more about that. But what I wanted to say, what I was trying to get to is that Gary Rowe document, it's not just the local police, the sheriff, and local FBI that know that there's a deal between the sheriff and the Klan, that they're going to be unprotected for about 15 minutes. They know exactly when, at what time, and they don't do anything to stop it. But that information also went to FBI headquarters, and J. Edgar Hoover knew about it. That makes him, like the local FBI, like the sheriff, it's not only state-sponsored terrorism, that's what we call it, but it's also makes them accessories before the fact. They're criminals. Hoover's a criminal for not doing anything about it. Accessory before the fact, and an accessory after the fact, legally. Any lawyers in here? Any pre-law folks? Right? You got to speak up, right? If you know a crime's going to happen. If you don't do it, you're an accessory. Especially if you're in a position of power and authority, like the sheriff. So I will write something about that in maybe volume 4 or 5, because I'm
or 6.
I'm getting there slowly.
Right.
But yeah, it's
just counterintuitive. As much as we know about how much J. Edgar Hoover detested Martin Luther King Jr. and insinuated that everything about the civil rights movement was sponsored by communism.
In particular, Beijing, he said
and
Peking.
In particular, Chinese communist infiltration. But it's just counterintuitive that the agency would be engaged in such an overtly covert domestic operation.
Well, back then it wasn't exactly overt. They didn't have the Freedom of Information Act yet, so they didn't realize that you and I would be sitting here in this room tonight looking at those documents. Okay.
Right.
So at some point, they felt very comfortable writing stuff like this. They didn't think anybody was going to ever see it. But this wasn't at a very low level of the CIA. This is the security office, and people at the very top of the security office are listening to this guy and encouraging him. And they never did help him out, as far as I can see, because I've never seen any novels like this, that what he wanted to do. And so apparently they used him without helping him, and didn't discourage what he was saying. And they knew a lot. They knew better. And they did, in one instance, tell him, they told him that he probably should be working with the FBI. And he said he didn't really like the FBI very much. It was kind of beneath him. And but he did once. This is a stakeout at a motel the King was staying in at the Atlanta airport. And on this particular occasion, this informant did with the FBI do a stakeout in the adjacent room and listen through the walls. And these are all the receipts in his pockets and his litter, in his trash can and stuff that they went in and got and pulled out when King was stepped out of the room. So I called it the motel stakeout. Anyway, their mole participated in that and then reported all this stuff back to the CIA and told the CIA that he had not told the FBI, that he was telling the CIA. So it's a very interesting predicament that we have here. They're not supposed to be involved in domestic operations. They're not supposed to be running, and in fact that's what they're doing, although they're not paying him, and they're apparently not giving him things. They are definitely encouraging him to come back. As you can see, there's 3 years of documents here of the same story that are going on. So I'm not really prepared to say more than that because I haven't looked at it, but I know that it's not going to be hard for me to identify everything, who's who, and get a whole lot more documentation on this story when I get around to it. But for right now, I've been sitting on it, but I thought that I like grassroots organizations, and I thought you guys might like a copy of that stuff.
We're so excited we can hardly stand ourselves. Seriously, folks, and I know that, and I want to just say real quickly, because I know we're sort of the senior end of this, but for you all out there, you're experiencing a lot of really crazy stuff now in what's going on in our country and around the world. And, in some decades ahead, you may be in a situation where you'll be hearing some of these things and hearing about some of the undercover work that is being done today, that we know is going on today around our capital. And hopefully we'll see some more action in the next couple of years. But I think you all we're all going through a very similar experience now with our country. So I'm kind of enjoying this tonight because I was your age when this was going on. And this was all part of the fibers that we all share together in our age group. So it's going to be, I wish I would be here when you all go through this in a few generations, but I'll watch from somewhere else. But anyway, it's just been fun to share it with you all tonight because this is really fascinating stuff. And we're going to have a lot of fun talking about it at the center, believe me. Thank you.
That's it. Have a nice evening. Thank you for coming.